Welcome back to part 3 of the programme, where we have some time now to look through a few of the major international news stories from the past few weeks. Yes, this is one of my responsibilities for the show, and yes, I have been absent once again from my duties for a few weeks because my brain cancer has been doing its damn best to mess with any plans I might have had by sending me back to hospital for a couple of unscheduled weeks. However, it hasn't finished me off quite yet, and with the help of some top quality drugs, hence the round-faced chubby new look, and with a never-ending stream of motivational biking news and views that I've been exchanging and reading with colleagues around the world, I'm back with what I think will be some of the more significant stories for this, what should I call it, a highlights reel that we're going to be running over the next few episodes. Strictly speaking, this isn't really news anymore since the official announcement happened back in June. But here on the Bike Show, given the stresses and strains of the past couple of months, we haven't yet talked about what is a huge development for Triumph motorcycles. At the end of June, Triumph launched 2 new 400cc models, a Street and a Scrambler. The rationale behind such a move is pretty obvious. Its lower cost will open up Triumph's products to potentially massive new markets, increasing sales, winning new Triumph fans around the world, and ultimately doing what all company shareholders crave, if not actually demand: increasing profits. Making a more affordable bike is no great stretch for a manufacturer like Triumph that is already renowned for its extensive, universally impressive range of modern classics, adventures, and sporting roadsters. These are also the same people who have successfully taken over the engine supply role from Moto2 and are, as I'm recording this, only a couple of days away from revealing the engine that they'll be using in their new range of motocross bikes, having recently shown us that project's new frame. Let's face it, this is a manufacturer that is brimming, if not actually overflowing, with confidence and technological innovation. So in terms of the engineering challenge, this move into a smaller capacity category that is more price sensitive than its usual market is well within its capabilities. Older fans of the marque may initially have shuddered at the thought of a cheap, small Triumph sullying the premium reputation of the Brit brand, but they needn't have worried, because what they demonstrated with these 2 new models is that the expected classy Triumph desirability can very much be built into a bike that costs well under half, or perhaps even a quarter, of what you'd happily fork out for one of their bigger siblings. I haven't seen one in the metal yet, and chances are we won't get that opportunity until sometime in the first half of next year, given that South Africa, Europe and the States will only receive units after the early demand in India has been somewhat satiated. With 10,000 orders at least received within about the first week or so of the launch, the response has been better, I think, than even Triumph itself was hoping. India's monster of a motorcycle market, its plethora of equally monstrous motorcycle manufacturers, and its proximity to numerous other populous countries in the region where bikes are the main mode of private transport, mean that choosing Bajaj as a manufacturing partner for this new project was, well, I suppose something of a no-brainer. Remember too that Bajaj already has a successful record of hooking up with a European brand to build their smaller capacity models, namely KTM and its baby Dukes. These 2 new Triumphs, the Speed 400 and Scrambler 400X, were designed at Triumph's HQ in Hinckley in Leicestershire with the involvement of Bajaj. Obviously, many of the components are shared between the 2 models, so let's take a quick look at what it is that they share, starting with the engine. This is a 398cc single-cylinder, 4-valve unit that's been tuned for easy rideability instead of outright ultimate performance, so more for accessible grunt than revvy power. That means you're getting 39.5 horsepower and 37.5 Newton meters, which are pretty good numbers for a roadster of this capacity. Identical torque to KTM's single-cylinder Duke 390, but about 10% shy of the peak power. On top of the shared engine, there is, as you'd expect, a frame, including a bolt-on subframe that also works for both models. Electronically, the two remain virtually identical, with the same instrument cluster that combines digital and analog displays in a smart unit that is pretty typically Triumph. And that continues with the shared LED lighting. Both bikes have traction control and ABS, a torque-assisted slipper clutch, and for a bit of extra security, there's a standard immobiliser. As for what separates the two models, apart from the obvious styling elements of the Speed's naked roadster look and the more dirt-oriented Scrambler, the Speed has an upside-down front fork and single rear shock, while the Scrambler has longer travel for its suspension and a longer wheelbase, and ditches the Speed's 17-inch front rim in favour of a 19-inch version that will be more amenable to some trail riding. It also gets a wider, higher handlebar, lower, chunkier foot pegs, ABS and traction control that can be turned off, a bit of a bash plate, and a front brake disc that grows by 20mm to 320mm. Those are the important stats for the new models, though the numbers that will help determine the bike's overall success, the prices, are still something of a matter of guesswork at the moment, given that we have several months until they pitch up in South Africa. As always, our unique market conditions, the tragic volatility of the rand, and with no idea whether the bikes would arrive directly in SA via the Indian or Thai factories or via the UK, we can only work backwards from what we hear rumoured in Europe. In France, for instance, there is talk of the Speed coming in just below the €6,500 mark, with the Scrambler slotting in nearer €7,000. That would translate into something like 135,000 for the Speed and 145,000 rand for the Scrambler. I have to say, lovely as the new Speed undoubtedly seems, at least from a distance, I'm not sure it's got enough of a price advantage, at least in the South African context, to make quite as dramatic an impact as it has on its debut in India. But I'll be happy to be proved wrong. It will be noticeably more expensive than the KTM Duke 390 with its better power and TFT screen, but then it does have an entirely different, more grown-up roadster appeal. And the same applies to the Scrambler X and the 390 Adventure. I can see the Triumphs comfortably outselling the KTMs, but I think some of the Chinese alternatives in a slightly higher capacity bracket, or Indian models from a smaller, cheaper capacity segment of the market, might blunt the appeal of what I have to say look like two very desirable new models in a market that is, let's face it, as weird as South Africa's. And on that note of weirdness, we'll call an end to this week's episode and ask you to join us next week, if you can, as we focus in on KTM's 890 SNT that Don rides for the first time at a track. I take a closer look at its touring credentials and some of its associated sport touring riding kit, and we'll check out the latest news and rumours from the Austrian brand. Hopefully see you then.